Genesis chapter 16 brings us face to face with the juxtaposition of Abram's faith versus his fear. As we saw last chapter, Abram has already had a long conversation with God about his heir or lack thereof. Now, several years later, the same topic comes up again. In fairness, this is a huge issue. All of God's covenantal promises that were made to Abram hinge upon him having a son. For Abram, the greatest source of his blessing, or what would be the greatest source of blessing, was also the greatest area of his temptation. And I think the same is often true for us. In this case, Abram's faith wavered and he gave into temptation and ultimately fell into sin. So a few just quick observations. First, sin is a shortcut. It's gaining something or taking something in the wrong way, in the wrong time, or in the wrong circumstances. Abram and Sarai wanted an heir, which is a good desire. They just went about it in a terrible way. Second, sin always has consequences. Some are obvious and some are rather indirect. Our sin will affect us and it affects those around us. Hagar is destroyed by all of this. Jealousy, contempt, and conflict come to define every relationship in this narrative. Third, unresolved sin always leads to further misdeeds. Abram becomes passive, Sarah becomes abusive, and Hagar flees. Let me conclude with just two further thoughts. First, God doesn't need our help in terms of planning or bringing about his will. Faith means that sometimes we must just wait for his timing. Every shortcut that we take leads us to a place that we really don't want to go. And this is true in regards to identity or sexuality, sacrifice, pleasure, and just about everything else. As the prophet Isaiah proclaims, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are my ways your ways, declares the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so too are my ways and my thoughts than yours." Lastly, we must consider Hagar in all of this. This story is not for the faint of heart, and we should rightly wrestle with issues of context, of human rights, justice, and even slavery. But Hagar is a remarkable figure. It's been pointed out that she is the only person in the Old Testament that actually gives God a name. And what a name it is. She says, "You are the God of seeing." To everyone else, she was an object, something to be used and then discarded, a means to an end. But to God, she was seen, known, loved, and blessed. In the end, this story, like all of the narratives in the Bible, is ultimately about God. It's about God whose plan and timeline are better than ours, and about God who sees us, even when we are all but invisible to everyone else. God saw Adam and Eve in the garden. He saw and heard the blood of Abel. He saw the wickedness of humanity in Noah's generation. He saw the prideful ambition of Babel. And he saw the desperation of Hagar. And he sees you and me. And so as you read this chapter, take a moment and just reflect upon the reality of what that means. Of what that says about God, the God of seeing, but also about what it says about us.